Tonight on The Wrap, millions more Epstein files are released. The US Department of Justice reveals emails between paedophile Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as well as correspondence with Sarah Ferguson and Lord Mandelson. We'll bring you all the latest as we continue to pour through the files, videos and photos. The Prime Minister defends his trip to China after President Trump warns that having closer ties with Beijing is very dangerous. The PM tells us that doing Chinese deals is in the UK's national interest.
What I don't think...
He's our biggest trading partner.
What I don't think is wise is for the United Kingdom to stick its head in the sand.
Also tonight, Donald Trump warns that time is running out for Iran to negotiate a deal on its nuclear programme. We analyse the scale of America's military build-up in the Gulf and ask if a new conflict can be avoided. Plus, we reveal how a toxin which causes vomiting and diarrhoea is found in batches of baby formula produced by Nestlé. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Susie Boniface and Madeline Grant. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers, including more details from the Epstein files. Good evening, Susie, Madeline, welcome to you both. We'll get your take in a moment. But first, let's go straight to Washington for the latest on the big developing story tonight, the release of millions more Epstein files. Our US correspondent James Matthews is looking through the documents for us. And James, what have you uncovered so far?
Yeah, hi, Gillian. Quite a bit to go through. More than 3 million pages, 2,000 plus videos. And in terms of the number of images, more than 180,000. This was publication day by the Department of Justice. Belatedly, of course. They all should have been out 6 weeks ago by law. But there's a lot in there. We have lifted some of the detail, and there are some familiar faces in there. Prince Andrew, or the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, gets a mention. So does Lord Peter Mandelson. Let me read you, Gillian, a few email exchanges, first of all between Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. Interesting for a number of reasons, one of which is the ease of access that Jeffrey Epstein appeared to have to Buckingham Palace. Let's go through just some of the emails. On the 11th of August in 2010, Epstein sent an email to former Prince Andrew, and he said this: "I have a friend who I think you might enjoy having dinner with. She'll be in London 20 to 24. And Andrew replied, "Of course, I'm in Geneva until morning of 22nd, but would be delighted to see her. Will she be bringing a message from you? Please give her my contact details to get in touch." He also wrote, "Great, any other information you might know about her that might be useful to know? Like, what have you told her about me? And have you given her my email as well?" Epstein replied, "She's 26, Russian, clever, beautiful, trustworthy, and yes, she has your email." Andrew replied, "That was quick. How are you? Good to be free?" And Epstein says, "Great to be free of many things." Now, Gillian, let me read you an email, and this is from Sarah Ferguson. Clearly, Epstein was a friend of the family. Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's ex-wife, of course. She wrote a letter, said this: "Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I had the best discussion with Target on Friday, and they want desperately the whole Mother's Army project. They also want to get behind my entire Sarah Ferguson brand, books, etc. Tommy Hilfiger wants to build my entire apparel, fragrance, etc. brand and sell it on QVC. NBC want my Mother's Army TV show. Ben Silverman wants it. So too does Ryan Seacrest. In just 1 week after your lunch, it seems the energy has lifted. I have never been more touched," she says, "by a friend's kindness than your compliment to me in front of my girls." And she finishes, "Thank you, Jeffrey, for being the brother I have always wished for." Lord Mandelson, remember their association, nothing new in the fact that they had a friendship. Mandelson, a visitor to his island, of course, and also a contributor to that notorious Jeffrey Epstein birthday book. Well, there are more email discussions taking place between Mandelson and Epstein. Let me read you one or two. Jeffrey Epstein wrote to his accountant, "Send $2,000 per month to Ronaldo." Now, Ronaldo, it was the then partner of Lord Mandelson, now husband. The reply from the accountant to Epstein says this: "Is this in addition to the 13K you wrote in previous email? Please confirm currency we are sending is US dollars. Will this occur on the 1st of every month? If so, should I start with April now or May? Please advise." Epstein responded saying, "No, after rethinking, send $4,000 only." So that's discussion between Epstein and his accountant, and that essentially was Epstein channeling money to the then partner of Lord Mandelson at a time when Lord Mandelson was business secretary of Her Majesty's government. One thing on Epstein I would mention, Gillian, there is a psychological report, more than 80 pages, all of them completely redacted. There is a scrap of information, and it is this, relates to a month before he died in jail, was deemed to have taken his own life. And it says, "No significant mental health issues. Threat to self, low." And that was in July 2019. He took his own life a month later in August 2019. So that just gives you a flavour of some of what we're seeing in this latest tranche of files.
James, there are references to President Trump in these documents, aren't there?
There are, and it's early, Gillian, and yes, there are references. How concrete they are is debatable at this stage, so I won't go into any too much detail. But yeah, he's mentioned, there is the mention of an FBI tip-off line, and his name is it's mentioned in conjunction with that. I'll say no more at this stage. I will say, or I will give you the White House response to that subject matter. They say this production may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included in the production that is responsive to the Act. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponised against President Trump already. So basically, somebody's phoned up this FBI tip line, said something about Donald Trump. They're saying, be very careful, because there was a lot of false and sensationalist stuff that was put onto this tip line.
And James, what does the release of all of these documents actually mean? What are the implications?
That will depend, frankly, Gillian, on the subject matter, and it's going to take days for all of us to wade through it. I suppose chief among the questions is who's in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit? What was their association? Is there any suggestion that they are associated with criminal wrongdoing, actively or just by enabling him, perhaps through their silence? And that will be a question for many people. It will be a question for the President, Donald Trump, a former good friend of Jeffrey Epstein. Remember, they fell out in the LA noughties. But it will be a question, what was their association? Did he know about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal impropriety, and to what extent might he have been engaged in it? Why didn't he do anything about it? These are questions. I would emphasise that Donald Trump, the president, emphatically denies any knowledge of Epstein's criminal wrongdoing or any involvement in it.
James, thank you very much for the moment. Well, let's bring in Susie and Madeline now for their thoughts. 3 million pages of the Epstein files released today. Your thoughts?
Absolutely classic media move to do it on a Friday afternoon.
And also another classic move. At the same time, Donald Trump went on his Truth Social and declared some other random stuff about Barack Obama, which everyone had long forgotten about, to do with the alleged Russia hoax. He said now he wants Barack Obama arrested for something else entirely. But it doesn't matter how many dead cats he's going to start throwing out. I think this stuff is still going to take precedence no matter what. I think even Barack Obama is going to go, yeah, Donald, whatever, and just be reading the stuff they can find online. So this is just going to, like James was saying, over the next few days, as journalists start going through this and they start finding deeper and deeper stuff in there, it's just going to snowball.
Madeleine, what is the significance? I mean, would you describe this as a bombshell?
Well, it's kind of too early to say, but just from what we've been able to see, even in the last couple of hours since it landed, potentially very explosive and involving many different, highly significant, influential people around the world. I imagine there'll be a lot of very powerful people will be squirming tonight and wonder what else may be found, but it will obviously take some time to go through it. Here in Britain, we're a little bit behind the news cycle because we will have gone to press with only a couple of hours because we're dealing with America time, so that makes it even more difficult. But I think that, just from what we heard, what I find almost more alarming than the content is simply the tone of some of these emails, an atmosphere of normalised secrecy, coziness, and you can kind of tell from the tone of the emails between Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Epstein that this feels like quite a normal thing, a kind of routine occurrence, like this has happened before. So I just kind of, I expect that we are really just scratching the surface at this point.
Just to say that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is quoted as saying, "I vigorously deny the accusations against me," and just because people are named in these communications, in these emails, it doesn't imply guilt or any wrongdoing.
But what you can see, aside from any allegations made against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, that phrase when he said to Jeffrey Epstein, "Is it good to be free?" That's enough. You don't need to have any allegations, proved or otherwise, against the former Prince Andrew to know that means he knows he's talking to a convicted criminal. He knows he was convicted for soliciting a minor for prostitution. He knew he was being investigated, which something that would have covered dozens and dozens of girls, probably. And now he knows he's free and he's continuing this relationship. I mean, just morally, that's abhorrent and that's enough.
OK. Susie and Madeleine, for the moment, thank you. That story is featuring on the front of the Sun newspaper with the headline, "Epstein fixed Russian girl for Andrew." We'll have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the papers at 10:30. Well, the Prime Minister was on bullish form today when we spoke to him in Beijing about Donald Trump's warning that having closer ties with China was very dangerous. The Prime Minister said the US President was probably talking about Canada rather than Britain. He's been speaking to our political editor, Beth Rigby, and warning there is some flash photography.
Starmer in Shanghai on the second leg of his China tour, here to meet student designers who've been tasked with mixing British and Chinese traditions. But this blooming friendship with one superpower triggering the other, President Trump.
What do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that.
An intervention the PM could do without and keen to downplay.
Are you not worried about Trump's remarks?
Well, as I say, I think President Trump is coming himself, or expected to come, in April. But what I don't think...
He's our biggest trading partner.
I don't think is wise is for the United Kingdom to stick its head in the sand. China is the second biggest economy in the world, and through this visit we've opened up lots of opportunities for jobs and wealth creation back in the United Kingdom.
But as the US turns ever more unreliable, other allies revisiting that relationship.
Do you agree with the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney that middle powers need to work together to counter the rise of great powers exercising hard power on all of us? Do you agree with that?
Well, we're living in a very volatile world. My compass is always the national interest of the United Kingdom, and I'm very clear that that means that we maintain and build on our close relationship with the US, that we build a stronger and closer relationship with Europe, but that we also are confident and engaging outwardly, and that means with China.
And Keir Starmer with something to show for that engagement. China lifting sanctions on half a dozen parliamentarians banned from China in 2021 for raising human rights abuses against the Uyghur people.
You've got those sanctions lifted.
Well, this has been a real cause for concern across Parliament, and therefore I did raise it, and we had a discussion. And as a result, it's clear from the Chinese that the restrictions no longer apply. And President Xi said what that means is that all parliamentarians are free to travel to China.
The PM in search for common ground, but this relationship characterised by deep differences and disagreements too, not least over the crackdown on political freedom in Hong Kong.
Did you ask President Xi to release the British citizen and pro-democracy campaigner Jimmy Lai? Have you specifically asked him to do that?
Well, I raised a number of sensitive issues, including Jimmy Lai.
You named Jimmy Lai to President Xi specifically.
I did.
He's languishing in prison. Did you get anywhere on it? Are you anywhere near to him being released?
I won't go into the details, but I'm absolutely clear about the manner in which we raised it and the importance of raising it.
But for this self-avowed pragmatist, human rights in China not the priority as he looks to drum up business for Britain. 2026, the year of the horse in China and the year of cutting the cost of living for Starmer back home.
This is amazing.
He'll hope this reset with the other world superpower could help, but it's laden with risk. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Shanghai.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer determined to make that visit to China despite much criticism, least of which from Kemi Badenoch, who said that it's the wrong time to go to China at this point in time and she would not have travelled there.
Well, it also comes off the back of a few other decisions that seem to suggest a general closer rapprochement with China, including the efforts on the Chagos deal and the agreement of the new embassy. So it's kind of not just this trip, but the stuff that's happening around it. I mean, in terms of what has he achieved from the deal, I mean, he certainly doesn't seem to have come back from the trip with much in the way of investment, even less than what Rachel Reeves managed last time she went there. And yes, sanctions have been lifted on British MPs, but this may well prove to be a precursor to some kind of return visit, because the Chinese delegation, no Chinese delegation would be able to probably enter Parliament, for example, without the agreement of the Speaker, and the Speaker of the House would not agree to it if there were still sanctions on MPs.
And Number 10 appears to have left the door open for President Xi Jinping to visit the United Kingdom, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, he's got to
Number
anyway.
10 aren't ruling it out.
They're not ruling it out.
No.
He's had a state visit not that long ago, I think, when the last Queen was still alive, as I can, unless I'm really old, I can remember it happening. I can remember some protests. Maybe.
Yeah.
Could be 2008. I don't know. It's really recent to me. But he's certainly had one before. But I think the issue is that these sanctions were completely meaningless because China doesn't even have sanctions legislation, and the people who were sanctioned weren't even trading in China, so it made no difference to them. It was a complete waste of time. And although he said he's raised the issue of Jimmy Lai, this is a British citizen who runs a newspaper, who is in jail for the crime of journalism in what used to be a British colony, and which was handed back to China on the condition of certain conditions still being met and democracy continuing, and it's completely been abandoned. So China did the dirty on that deal. I think what you've got here is you've got a bit of realpolitik. Kemi Badenoch is, has the privilege of being in opposition and can say, well, I would never do that. But if you were the Prime Minister, it's in the national interest to talk to major economies and to have that deal. And the thing that appeals to businesses about China, which you don't have now in America, is that it's stable. And it's horrible to lots of people in lots of ways, and there's a genocide going on, but it's not about to change. And when you're a business, you want to go and invest. You can't do that in America now, because as soon as Donald Trump wakes up, everything you did yesterday's out the window.
Madeleine, what about Donald Trump's take? Because he's saying it's very dangerous for the UK to forge closer ties with China, so he's actually angered.
Well, I think Donald Trump is right. It is very dangerous, and isn't it astonishing that the British delegation had to basically hire a plane to take them to China because they didn't trust that a governmental plane would not be kind of bugged and tapped. we had to take what one MP referred to as a burner plane, as well as all the burner phones that people use there. But at the same time, it's a bit rich coming from President Trump, whose actions in recent weeks have done more than anything, I think, to hasten pushing many allies in the direction of China, because they fear that they can no longer rely on America as an increasingly flaky ally. So I think he's done his bit in this direction.
And when Sir Keir Starmer was questioned as to, you know, what he felt about Donald Trump being angry at him visiting China, he did say that the president will be there himself in April.
I think I get to the point where I really want to see Keir Starmer, when he's asked, how do you feel what Donald Trump's just said about this, if he just shrugs and goes,
yeah,
because that's literally where everyone's going. Well, has he just said something else? You know, you have to just... This is why you can't bank on Trump. He will sign a deal for the Chagos Islands and then call it really stupid. He will criticise you for doing something with one of his opponents because you're not doing it with him. But actually, you can't do business with him because he keeps raising massive tariffs and harming his own economy. So there comes a point where he's going to go, eh.
Yeah, and where you have to actually look at decisions based on first principles, and is it in our national interest? Not just does America say that we should do something, because that creates a terrible rod for your own back when you're dealing with someone as volatile as Donald Trump.
OK. Talking of which, Donald Trump, yes, him again. He's warned Iran that time is running out to negotiate a deal on its nuclear programme. He reiterated today that a massive armada is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm and purpose towards Iran.
We have a large armada, flotilla, you can call it whatever you want, heading toward Iran right now, even larger than what we had in Venezuela. We're now sending actually a larger number of ships to Iran, and hopefully we'll make a deal. If we do make a deal, that's good. If we don't make a deal, we'll see what happens.
Well, our defence and security analyst, Professor Michael Clark, has been looking at the US Navy's current aircraft carrier deployments and has this analysis of what they might mean for Iran.
If we look at the current positioning of the US Navy's aircraft carriers, it gives us a sense of the power the Americans have around the globe and what Donald Trump just may be thinking in relation to Iran. So, the carrier, the USS Roosevelt, has been spotted leaving its base in San Diego in California. Now, this could be to relieve the USS Washington, which is in the Sea of Japan. It's on a permanent deployment there. And the Washington could be going back home because the Roosevelt arrives, or the Washington could actually go to the Middle East. Or maybe the Roosevelt should be heading to the Middle East itself, though it would take it a long time to get there from California. But that's what we know is happening. A second US carrier, the USS Eisenhower, has also been deployed from Norfolk in Virginia. Now, the original idea seems to have been that it would relieve the USS Ford, which is in the Caribbean. The carrier George H. Bush was in the Western Atlantic, looking as if it was preparing to do that, but that is returned to Norfolk, possibly due to a technical problem. So perhaps the Eisenhower, instead of relieving the USS Ford in the Caribbean, might be going across the Atlantic into the Mediterranean itself. The USS Ford, which was used in the operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, and that would normally be rotated about now, sent home. But given the events elsewhere, the US Navy may choose to leave it in position just a little while longer. And already, the USS Lincoln has arrived from the South China Sea all the way to the Arabian Gulf off the coast of Iran. And it's been conducting exercises there, and this currently forms the basis of the armada that Donald Trump has threatened Iran with. That now means that 5 of the 11 carrier strike groups the US has are now at sea on operations. And it looks as if the US wants to give itself the option of having a second or even a third carrier strike group somewhere in the region within operational reach of Iran sometime in the next week to 2 weeks. Not the least significant is the arrival from the United States of more combat aircraft. F-35s are confirmed flying via the US air base in the Azores, the archipelago in the North Atlantic. And F-15s appear to be on their way into the theatre as well. If the US doesn't have enough military power on station at the moment to launch a sustained attack on Iran, it's only a matter of time before it does.
So, Susie, Madeline, who wants to answer the very, very important question, is war inevitable? Who wants to go first?
Well, I would say that it certainly looks as if the US is poised to attack Iran. But then the next question is, what form does that attack take? Is it going to be some kind of attempt at a surgical precision strike where you go for particular targets, weapons sites, or maybe even very targeted attacks on Iranian leaders? Or does it look like something more sustained, which could involve elements of regime change? I mean, there's just so many variables at play here. And obviously, Western intervention in that part of the world hasn't always ended fantastically well. So there are big questions about the extent to which America will want to be involved in the long term. We've already seen recently how they performed a strategically very effective attack in Venezuela, kidnapping Nicolas Maduro, and having the wherewithal to do that suggests a very high level of military intelligence and capability. There is perhaps a feeling that having done that successfully, they feel that, you know, this is something they could also achieve successfully.
Well, with 5 of the 11 carrier strike groups at sea on operations, it does seem as if they mean business.
Yeah, they're still probably a good week away from actually being where you need to have them. And I disagree with Maddie. I don't think there's going to be any kind of a surgical strike. You don't have the same situation as in Venezuela where he wants to prop up the regime that's continuing. As he said there, you know, what he's interested in is a deal. And if he was going to... Listen, if he was going to go and bomb Iran and get rid of the mullahs because of the fact they've been killing people at a faster rate than the SS were managing of some days in the Second World War, I would actually have to like the man. As it is, that's not what he's going to do. He's posturing, he's putting all his tanks on their lawn, and he wants to do a deal over oil and the nuclear project. They've been rebuilding the nuclear sites that he didn't bomb very successfully last time, and he wants to do a deal for a huge amount of resources, which at the moment Russia's getting a lot of the oil out of there. It's as simple as that. When he gets that deal, he's not going to care how many protesters have been murdered, how many young women have been abused and raped in custody.
Well, he had previously said that he was coming to their aid.
And then he just sat on his hands. And they needed him. They needed him a week ago. And it's, you know, he's not going to go in and launch a war. That's not Donald Trump. He's been very pro-intervening in foreign conflicts in foreign countries, but his whole party, his whole shtick is not long-term interventionism.
No.
He wants to have
no, but
very
that doesn't
short
rule out
brief.
that doesn't rule out strikes. We've already seen Operation Midnight Hammer strikes on the nuclear facilities.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
No, but I mean, they're very willing to do it.
They're willing to do something that looks good, that makes him look good, that makes him see he can declare a victory of some sort, and he wants to walk away clean. But he can't do that in terms of actually removing the mullahs. And if you do that, the whole country has actually collapsed. The economy's collapsed, the currency's collapsed, the systems have collapsed. It's a failed state. In order to, if you were going to take off the head out of that, take the keystone out, you have to provide a regime. You have to have something to run it. The Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, has had no experience of running a government. He's been in exile for 47 years. He doesn't know how to do it. And there is no sort of firm opposition within Iran who could take over, and there's no one who's got the machinery of government apart from other mullahs. So you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And no indication thus far that Donald Trump is going to back Reza Pahlavi. We're going to have to go to a break. Much more to come. We'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages for you now. Well, The Sun leads on the latest Epstein file release, pointing out that Jeffrey Epstein arranged for 26-year-old Russian woman to meet Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The Telegraph also leads with that story. The Times reports that the former Prince Andrew invited Jeffrey Epstein to visit him at Buckingham Palace a month after the paedophile financier was released from house arrest. The Guardian reports Epstein sent thousands of pounds in bank transfers after his release from prison to Peter Mandelson's husband. That's according to the emails published. We've just seen a statement from Lord Mandelson, and he says, "I was wrong to believe Epstein following his conviction and to continue my association with him afterwards. I apologise unequivocally for doing so to the women and girls who suffered." The Daily Mirror's headline from the files, Trump hit by underage sex claim. The US Department of Justice says claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponised against President Trump. Meanwhile, The Eye reports that 51% of voters want Sir Keir Starmer replaced as leader, as he falls to his lowest negative approval rating of -49. The Financial Times reports that Trump's choice for Federal Reserve Chair, Kevin Warsh, has buoyed confidence in the dollar, rising by 0.7% since the announcement. The Daily Express leads with a warning that Labour is betraying the opportunities on offer from exiting the EU and call for a proper Brexit. So, should we have a look at The Eye first of all? Half of voters wanting Starmer replaced now. Your thoughts, Madeleine?
So few. No, I mean, I can't say I'm at all surprised. Keir Starmer seems to, every month brings some terrible new milestone for him. The news that he's, at certain points, has been less popular even than Liz Truss post the mini-budget and other prime ministers at particular moments of great unpopularity. I think it speaks to the amount of U-turning that we've seen. I think there's been some very controversial things that they have attempted to bring in, which they haven't been very deft at managing with their backbenchers, but also things that weren't in the manifesto at all that have provoked ire. There's a range of difficult stories for the government in every direction, and there seems to be a complete inability on their part for Number 10 to kind of take control of the news cycle in any way and respond in a proactive way to when negative stories emerge. They seem to be very bad at setting any kind of positive narrative for themselves, or just a narrative generally.
Lowest negative rating of his tenure so far, -49. Are you surprised at that, Susie?
No, but I also think he's probably not surprised. And I think, as you've seen when he's interviewed Beth Rigby today, when he says, well, I'm gonna be here and serve out my term and so on, he doesn't have to worry about this yet. If there was an election next week, or it looked like his government was about to fail, this would be an issue. But he's got a majority the size of Donald Trump's hairpiece, and he can afford to lose a by-election here or there. He can afford to let Reform take a few more MPs. It's not going to make any difference to his ability to get legislation through Parliament.
So
yes,
do you think he's complacent? Do you think
I don't think he's complacent, but yes, he's been better with handling his backbenchers. But I would take issue with what Maddie said about the PR, the comms and the cell that they've had within Downing Street. It has been very, very bad up till now. But the China Act, I think, the way they've been doing it, they handled this particular... They've changed the team so many times in Downing Street. They seem to have finally got there, because what's happened with the China visit is they've managed to have some good news. They've managed to get wins out early. Then they've managed to drop things, keep things back, like the sanctions lifting, drop that into interviews as you go, so that you can just divert the press from going to find something else to write about.
What do you see as the big wins of the China...
Mechanically, were handled well.
What do you see as the big wins of the China visit?
the fact that it wasn't a disaster, I think, at this stage.
I guess
that's
they have
the
to bank
win.
the wins at the moment.
They can't come away saying, I've got extra billion of deal, I haven't got this, that and the other.
Well, you won't need a visa to go there.
They've had control of the news cycle
I would
while
say
they were there.
that I don't think it's simply a case of the Prime Minister can ride it out as long as he likes. You know, we've got potentially a very, very bad set of local elections coming up for him and a by-election which may well end in defeat. All of this is making his MPs more restive, more rebellious and more likely to use the internal mechanisms to topple the PM. It is a lot more difficult in the Labour Party to do that than the Tory Party, or at least until recently when they changed the rules about that to make it more secure. But I think, you know, there are an awful lot of... Although the majority is very large, that disguises the fact that many MPs have very small majorities, you know, of under 1,000 or so. So they're hypersensitive to things that they feel will be unpopular. And that is, I think, what has resulted already in so much U-turning.
Re-elections, if you look at the Telegraph, Chris Bryant is saying that voters don't care about unnecessary local elections that Labour is cancelling.
Well, they're not unnecessary if they were the elections you were looking forward, really. No one really cares about their local elections. Like, no one thinks, oh, hooray, hooray, I can go and vote for my local authority or the parish council. But they are necessary. They happen on a certain schedule for a certain reason. And I think calling them unnecessary is probably a bit of a slip on Bryant's part, because I don't think he genuinely believes they're unnecessary. I think if you're going to have these reforms and it's going to cause problems with the elections, then you probably delay the reforms bit in order to get the election done first, rather than the other way around. I mean, we've been talking about having the possibility of elections in Ukraine, and half of Ukraine is in a different part of the world. And you can't have a secure election, you can't have referendums on whether to accept a Russia deal, that kind of thing. And we're still talking about perhaps finding ways of doing it. If they can do that in a war zone, I'm pretty certain they can do it in, you know, various different counties of the...
Do you think Chris Bryant has misspoken?
Well, I just think it's always a big mistake for politicians to speak with confidence about what voters do and don't want, to say, oh, well, they don't care about that. Actually, a lot of them do care very much about that. A lot of people are up in arms.
As soon as you say that they don't care, they'll find a reason that they do.
Precisely. I feel like it should be like one of the Politics 101 lessons that they're taught in whatever media training they do before they become MPs.
Politics 101.
They have to find that.
We need to find that room.
Not enough.
We need to find that room. The Express. Now you must give Britain a proper Brexit. Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch and Boris Johnson are backing a new campaign to stop the betrayal. This is the Express, you're on. Not listening?
That's all I can say. I mean, we can't really talk much about it because you can't see the inside of the paper and what the argument is. But
well, they're saying that they're betraying the opportunities.
Right, and the people they've got writing for them about this terrible betrayal are Nigel Farage, Kemi Badenoch and Boris Johnson, who were in charge of Brexit. If it's a betrayal, it's all on them. Sorry.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it does... Again, it's difficult to speak about this story without seeing more, but I guess it's also responding to a measurable, closer alignment with the EU, which is something that Starmer and his cabinet ministers are pushing for. And I think there is an active discussion going on within the Labour Party about how much that's a good idea. So many MPs do not feel that, you know, especially if they're in more Brexit voting constituencies, that this is necessarily going to go down well, while others see it as an easy opportunity for economic win. So I think it reflects specific decisions that are being made by Labour at the moment and the debate around that.
How would you define a proper Brexit, Susie?
This is the problem we had, isn't it? Between 2016 and 2020, we had this unending argument about whether we dealt or didn't dealt, whether it was an easy sunlit upland, whether it was a nightmare on a stick, and whether we should do this, whether they were holding us over a barrel, they're holding us around, bloody Europe was their fault, all the rest of it. It was like having Henry II alive again, and we had a king across the water who wanted to tax us to pay for their wars. It was just incredible. We just regressed 1,000 years. And so we did Brexit. We had a deal. We've now got someone in place who is sticking to the deal, but trying to find ways we can make it actually more productive for us.
They may wish, for example, to rejoin a customs union, and that would then affect the ability to make trade deals, for example. So there are, you know, there's... going in a certain direction will necessarily close down other options. So that's kind of...
I think the Express would do better if they said, you know, to undo the betrayal that Brexit was of the country, because they were lies, it didn't come true, the promises were never fulfilled, and the people that were in charge of enacting it were absolute incompetent morons. And, you know, that was the betrayal.
Betrayal of a betrayal is where we're at, really.
Brexit itself was a betrayal. The fact someone's betrayed Brexit, I mean, thank goodness. Try and undo it.
Should we move on to The Guardian? The Israeli army accepting that the Gaza death toll is up to at least 70,000. Madeline?
Yes. Unfortunately, again, we don't have much detail about this story beyond that headline. But for some time now, the Israeli army has been unwilling to accept those official estimates. What's not included is, for example, what I would be interested in knowing is what proportion of those deaths would be considered combatants. But I can't speak about that detail because I don't know. But it's a big moment because this is something that people have been demanding for quite some time.
It is significant, isn't it, Susie? Because the Israeli army are the ones actually verifying this figure.
When the Israeli government spokespeople have been on media around the world, and especially in the UK, every time they've said, well, so many thousand were killed in this airstrike, we did this yesterday. So well, those are Hamas figures. Those are from the Health Ministry of Gaza that are run by Hamas. You can't trust them. And if now they're accepting the figures, then presumably it's because there's been some kind of independent verification. But, you know, we'll know more when we see some more of the detail.
OK. To The Times, some sad news. Catherine O'Hara, the actress best known for Home Alone, the film, that very well-known film, she's died at the age of 71.
She's amazing. I actually started watching a programme called Schitt's Creek, which is SCH, which she is also starring in, and she's a very versatile actress. It took me a while to realise that she was also the mum from Home Alone, which is another iconic role that she plays so well.
The mum in Beetlejuice. Are we not going to mention it?
I haven't seen that.
Beetlejuice, It was fantastic. She did so much brilliant stuff throughout her career. And Schitt's Creek was the fact that she did that, I think, you know, into her 60s and was getting Emmys for it.
Phenomenal actress. And so is such a fantastic sort of character actress, real extraordinary comic potential.
Yeah. Famous, I think mostly famous for the 1990 film Home Alone.
Yeah.
So let's move on, shall we now? The UK Food Standards Agency has told Sky News that a toxin which can cause vomiting and diarrhoea has been detected in batches of baby formula produced by the food and drink giant Nestlé. The FSA, along with the UK Health Security Agency, has been investigating since there was a recall of more than 60 batches of Nestlé SMA formula earlier this month. Well, Sky's Katerina Vitozzi has more. Let's take a look.
A toxin has been found in Nestlé baby formula. Here is what you need to know. We've been told that investigators have found a toxin that can cause vomiting, diarrhoea and stomach cramps in batches of baby formula produced by food and drink giant Nestlé. The UK's Food Standard Agency, along with the UK's Health Security Agency, has been investigating since more than 60 batches of SMA formula produced by Nestlé were recalled in early January. Now, these were batches sold on supermarket shelves, online, and also some were prescription only. At the time of the recall, Nestlé said that this was due to the potential presence of this heat-resistant toxin called cerulide, and that their recall was out of an abundance of caution. The FSA has been unable to confirm, when asked by Sky News, how many of the batches have this toxin inside it, but they said that investigations were ongoing.
So he basically experienced a full day of vomiting and then continued. So we changed batch, make sure we were using a fresh batch. And then vomiting persisted for another week or so. He was really uncomfortable with feeding, really rigid. After that first week, his feeds were really low, so we were still concerned days later about it, to the extent that we ended up going to A&E again because we were still concerned about his feeds in general. As parents, it's bewildering the massive range of formulas that are on the shelves. So you pick a brand and you think, OK, this brand's going to be great. So you kind of place your faith and your trust in them that all these checks are carried out and that they've got quality control procedures in place. You feel guilty in a way that you've given them this stuff that's got it in, or potentially got it in.
The FSA could confirm that the toxin was found in the sole batch of Aptamil formula produced by Danone, and that the issue was a shared supplier used by both Danone and Nestlé.
Well, a reminder that a spokesperson for Nestlé has said there's been no change to the status of this recall. Nestlé moved quickly and decisively to voluntarily issue a recall notice on the 5th of January 2025. This was due to the possible presence of cerulide in certain products because of an ingredient used in specific batches. Susie and Madeline, your thoughts on this story? I'm particularly worrying for parents who put their trust, as he was saying, in a brand and believe that they're doing the best for their baby.
Of course you do. I mean, all I could say is fantastic investigative journalism to get to the bottom of this. Genuinely terrifying. As you say, it's an area where, you know, parents will take for granted the assurances that they're given, and for them to, you know, for this to suddenly come out, it will make people worry, I think, more about what they're giving to their children generally, which is not ideal.
Susie?
I think the bigger issue is that this item was still on sale and able to get to these parents, either because it was bought before the recall or because it was still on the shelf after the recall. And also, those parents were unaware that anything had been recalled. And I think part of that is because we have a splintered media landscape now. People don't all get their news from the same source. And so, you know, unless it's going to be very, very widespread, you're not going to hear that there's been a recall for a product that you might use. So either there's been a problem with it staying on the shelf or the recall not being flagged up well enough that parents know about it. Or that it's just, you know, that somehow the parents have bought it and managed to keep it past the point of recall, that they haven't been made aware.
And at the time, Madeline, Nestlé said that they were doing so, bringing the recall into play out of an abundance of caution.
Gosh, I mean, that sounds like a very bureaucratic framing of it. Almost a sense that they're trying to, I guess, congratulate themselves for having belatedly done the right thing.
OK. Madeline and Susie, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, it's just like the good old days for Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents based in Washington, D.C. David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism?
I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro,
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment? Is it a draw?
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News.
It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week.
We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories,
but with more lively debate,
more in-depth commentary,
and more of what you need to know.
Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines.
The Wrap.
Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Shall we see what's happening with all of the sports news? And Chris.
United! Very good!
Get in there, beauty! How are the lads?
As a youngster, Alan Shearer had one ambition: to play in the black and white stripes of Newcastle United. News of his signing was confirmed by Kevin Keegan on Newcastle's current tour of Thailand.
We have signed Alan Shearer. It's a world record fee that we've paid, and we're delighted.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Most important point is a Geordie.
We want to save the press conference until we go back home to Newcastle, because the signing is for the people of Newcastle.
I've got no comment to make at this stage. I'll make it later on. You must be pleased, thank you. Delighted. Thank you.
It was just time to come back home, because I'd left 10 years earlier to go down to Southampton as a 15-year-old. It wasn't as if Newcastle were struggling. They were a club that had just thrown away that 12-point lead in the race for the title. I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher end, and I wanted my best years ahead of me.
His hometown club have been doing brisk business in copies of the shirt Shearer will wear.
525 for his name, but we don't know if he's number 9 yet or not, but that's the number people are getting. It'll be like 725 for his name and number.
Every Geordie, like a homing pigeon, wants to come home. Alan's come home, and I think it's great for the club. And it'd say to the kids in the area, we're going to give you a chance.
He's coming home! He's coming home! He's coming home! Shearer's coming home!
Newcastle United, that little team in the northeast of England, do you know? We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again. The football team has such an effect on our lives.
So, John, £15 million is an awful lot of money. Will you ever get it back?
It is an awful lot of money. I wish we'd paid less, but, you know, it's the marketplace. It's the business of football.
Shearer's move from Blackburn to Newcastle beats the previous record, the £13 million that AC Milan paid for Gianluigi Lentini. And it's almost double the previous British record of £8.5 million that Liverpool paid for Stan Collymore.
Worth 15 million?
Worth 20 million to me.
For the price of just one Alan Shearer, you could actually afford to buy yourself a brand new Tyne Bridge, arguably the ultimate dilemma for any Geordie.
Everybody had to put personal in, but the brewery, Newcastle Brewers, the fans could never thank Newcastle Brewers enough for what they did to the club. They brought the sponsorship deals forward and put in etc.
When you come to think of it, £15 million then was like this vast amount of money, a world record fee. I loved the pressure and the expectation that sort of went with that. I enjoyed it, you know. I enjoyed people looking at me, wanting or expecting or demanding that I go out and score goals.
For goodness sake, you're paying a world fee for a centre forward, England's centre forward, and he's a Geordie.
At Blackburn, fans were returning shirts with Shearer's name on. The club, though, say they did all they could to keep him.
We are devastated for the club, the fans and the people of Blackburn, but Alan now feels it is time to move on.
Even the day he arrived, he'd always ask me, what, you know, have Newcastle gone on when I go into the dressing room after the game. Newcastle, as we all know, you know, were his hometown.
He rang me very early.
Look at the weather for you now. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the weather will remain unsettled for a while yet, with further flooding possible, but there'll be some drier and brighter interludes. Much of southern England, northwest Scotland and the southwest of Ireland will have a dry start to the weekend. Elsewhere, there'll be outbreaks of rain, with snow more likely for the Grampians. Patchy rain will become increasingly confined to eastern Scotland, northwest England, the West Midlands and Wales during the morning. Meanwhile, a few showers will move into southwest England and the southwest of Ireland.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, all the latest as we trawl through millions of new Epstein files.